Yeah, good afternoon. Jose, thank you very much, and thanks to Future ICT for giving us this platform. So I think it's always very invigorating to hear Nandan talk, and it's very sustaining till the next time you hear him come on the stage and share some new ideas. So I will pick up a bit on where Nandan spoke in the morning. It is about creating a sustainable digital public infrastructure. What we clearly see that when we are looking at creating any e-governance solutions at scale, it is important to address the challenges posed by accessibility, affordability, and awareness. These are three pillars which become very important and the bedrock on which to build the technical design and architecture of any digital public infrastructure. And I think that has been a big hallmark of the way the digital public infrastructure has been created in India. It is equally important when we spoke in the morning and heard Sujit talk about beacon. Discovery and trust become big elements of it. Discovery clearly leads to and solves for accessibility. How are you able to discover the ecosystem on the back of a public infrastructure? Trust becomes very important for any sort of adoption and awareness to get created. When we look at the story of the inclusion which digital public infrastructure has brought about in India, I think the three vectors on which it has come about is in the space of the digital public goods, which become the foundational architecture, the technology, the enablers and the principles of design that have been adopted over here, and equally important, the enabling policy and regulation that has enabled this entire ecosystem to come alive. When we look at some of the architecture designs which are important, one is openness and interoperability. So when you're talking about a digital public infrastructure, it becomes very important that you give equal or equitable access and opportunity to everybody in the ecosystem. It is not just the users, it is also the enablers who are becoming a part of the ecosystem. And by design, it has to allow for public and private ownership. And that is what has been very important. And when we talk about some of the experiences, Nandan referred to the airline industry, there was a reference to the telecom industry. I think one of the big examples we always see in India is being the banking industry. When we look at the payments architecture today, and we go back a few years, not too many, we are talking about 20 years back, we used to find a scenario when you're opening a bank account in a particular bank, you could only operate the account in the branch in which you have opened the account. So we are talking about a system which was so centric that you could only physically go to the bank branch and operate your account. And where do we see ourselves today? We have had a journey where you moved from the same bank branch to being able to operate your bank account from any branch of the same bank, to interoperability coming into play where you could go to any bank and operate your account across banks, which has been the hallmark of the ATM infrastructure in the country, where with the national financial switch, you could withdraw money from any bank just by going to the ATM of any other bank. And today we are talking about UPI, which has been a success story because of the fundamental design principles, where today you are actually using a non-bank application to access a bank account. And that, I think, defines what we are talking about, a digital public infrastructure which is open and interoperable. E-governance and scale becomes important, but governance around it becomes very, very critical. So following a policy which the government also calls out, when you talk about minimum government and maximum governance, I think these are factors which become very important in the design of this infrastructure. I'm going to refer to a slightly busy slide, but when we look at the building blocks of the digital public infrastructure in the country, one of the foundational architecture has been around the national identity. The identity at scale has solved for multiple stacks being created on top of it. Whether we look at the permanent account number, which was the tax identifier, which came about in 2004, or we look at Aadhaar as a national identity. These are the building blocks because of their openness or the way that public and private enterprise could leverage on these digital assets, that we could create a lot of solutions, be it in the space of payments, be it social security, and today we are talking about multiple stacks coming around diverse sectors, ranging from education, health, and we spoke about in the morning, to mobility and e-commerce. These are solved for solutions at scale. We are talking about identity today, which reaches out to 1.35 billion people who have a unique identity, and because of which they are able to participate in multiple government initiatives, be it government disbursements of benefits, be it opening of account. Over the last few years, we've seen a 24% increase in inclusion, primarily based on the penetration of bank account opening and accessibility being provided across the country. When I look at Protean as an organization, we were conceptualized way back almost 28 years ago in 1995 as an organization which was conceptualized to provide the capital market transformation by enabling the infrastructure or the digital public infrastructure on which you can do capital market reforms. Going from there, we are talking about the setting up the interventions in the tax system, which was right from providing the tax identity to each individual to building an entire ecosystem for tax governance, from the government perspective, from the individual's perspective, from the institutions which are participating over there. Leading on from there, it became equally important to look at public infrastructure to support social security and welfare. And that is where we played a role in enabling the national pension system in the country, which went on to also enable the Atal Pension Yojana, which was a flagship program for providing a social security layer to the gig economy, to the weaker sections of the society, and build a public infrastructure on which people could access their social benefits. Identity and payments has been a hallmark, and clearly playing in that space, we today are providing various APIs and ecosystem enablers, which today provide for open banking, which today going ahead provide for ability to provide credit on the back of some of the data interventions which are happening in the space of account aggregator, which is putting the power of the data in the hands of the user. Because at the end of the day, we talk about data privacy and security, it becomes equally important for the user to be in control of their data and be able to share it in a consented architecture. And open digital ecosystems is something where we are contributing. We are today powering the online networks for digital commerce as an ecosystem enabler, powering and connecting multiple ecosystem players for enabling discovery and also providing the ability to build multiple consumer interfaces through which you can actually access all these services. DPGs today, as we see, have definitely on the foundational architecture of identity created the entire network of inclusion. It has done serious interventions in the financial institution space. But going forward, what we are seeing equally important is the ability to take these DPGs into multiple ecosystems and build open digital ecosystems, creating interventions in multiple areas across health, across education, across urban governance, state service delivery, and that is what all comes together to create sustainable cities. What we see as a potential economic impact, it's almost about 700 billion, which can come across from the creation of these multiple digital ecosystems. So I think I would conclude my presentation with this and look forward to the panel to discuss with the other countries, geographies, fellow organizations in the institution over here and build upon this. Thank you very much.